Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Heroes of Bronze. Dan, Mark, and Sean have joined me. We're going to wrap up the Kree Skrull War, and I feel like there was at least an issue here that was truly a Kree Skrull War. So I mean, that was kind of cool. Um,
From the title.
yeah. Uh,
Uh, I mean, I think this was a blind spot for all of us. And yeah, I expected it to be more of a cosmic adventure thing.
I don't think
yeah,
it was
this
called Kree Skrull War until way later when they started throwing it into reprints, was it?
Yeah.
that's possible.
Well, yeah,
It's
true enough, but
yeah.
nothing. They didn't have crossover events back in 73.
Yep,
Well,
exactly.
Eh.
I think on the cover of the last issue, I think it's called the Skrull Kree War.
Oh, okay.
Well, finale of the Skrull versus Kree War. Yeah, there you go.
I will say the second to last issue, God, where is it? Let me find it. It's page 3 of the second to last issue where they have the catch you all up moment. And I'm like, how a shitload of stuff happened in this story. I mean,
Yes.
like, that would be like 4 years of comics these days.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of that happened, I think, in the Amazing Adventures stuff as well, like the Inhumans books, which those are a lot of fun because those I think Neil Adams came right over from those. He did the Inhumans side of those directly into
Yeah.
his Avengers books, and they were fantastic. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Marvel
Yeah.
would
I mean,
milk this forever.
yeah.
And
Well,
people
I
would
mean,
complain that we're complaining about decompressed storytelling.
yeah, yeah. But, I mean, I think that, I mean, I dug it. I dug the wrap up. I thought bringing back Rick Jones, lionization of the Golden Age heroes. That was fun. Um,
Hmm.
although I did think it was interesting when he said that, Cap and Namor were real people, but
Right.
the original Human Torch wasn't. Yeah.
Well, licensing.
Well,
Well, the Torch was an android,
he's
wasn't he?
yeah. Well,
Oh, that's true.
he's been walking around through this entire story with the Human Torch's like revivified corpse.
You know,
Well, wasn't I remember back in the 70s, 80s, I think we all kind of thought that the Vision was the Human Torch.
I think that that's canon. I think that the Vision's body is actually the Human Torch's body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, no, I don't know. I was pretty happy with the way it all wrapped up. I like the Inhumans thing. At first, I was like, oh my God, we're going to complicate this all again. And then I was like, that's a pretty solvable story. And I mean, the other thing about it is, what I really loved about it is that each issue was a fully contained story that then connected on to the next one. But
Right.
I like that Inhuman story was like, okay, that happened, and it ties into all of this other stuff, but you don't have to have read it. Like, I didn't find myself going like, God, what happened in those, Marvel fanfare books or whatever it was where the adventure stories were? Because I was like, oh, I get it.
Well, I mean, talking about that story, for me, the first thing to talk about, and I think I talked about it at the end of last month, you know, just that splash page with
Yeah.
Triton, uh,
Yep.
is just
Yep.
amazing to me, and all the art throughout.
yeah. It was jarring though to go from two issues of Adams back to Buscema for the final one. It
Hmm.
would have been nice if he could have finished this thing off after
Yeah.
starting it or,
Well,
or
I
being in the middle of it.
and I think Neil agrees with you,
Yeah.
or would have agreed with you.
Hmm.
Yeah, he basically said that. I don't know if you read his little
The afterward.
preface to the reprint.
Yeah.
No, I am reading them on Marvel Unlimited, and I did
Me
not
too.
see anything like that. So, what was that about? Did he somehow couldn't do it?
I think he got pulled off the book
What?
only to do something else. Um, I sincerely would have loved to finish that story. It would have been a grand romp. That's
Huh.
good.
Well, now I'm angry for the fact that I'm missing a Neil Adams Avengers book that I could have had. Damn it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think it's funny how, it's the actual story that I thought we were going to get doesn't really start until the very end, like the last panel of the seventh of nine issues.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I thought it was cool. I actually thought I love the clearly we haven't really gotten to the Vision and the Scarlet Witch being together yet, but I mean, like all the pieces are there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, I remember when I was reading it, I was like, when they were like, we have to go to the Shield station to get a ship that'll fly to wherever, and I was like, God, today Tony Stark could just shit something out that had. Tony Stark's been developing faster than light travel for like the last 5 years, that kind of stuff. Uh, and whatever they do, they have to use Thor's hammer to power it. So,
Hey, so here's a thing. Now, I've never seen Thor open like a dimensional rift.
Just uses as a teleporter. That was new to me as well. I'm
Right.
sure he does it, but I don't remember that.
I remember that from someplace. I don't remember
Okay.
what, but
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Andy. It's
Yeah.
handy. So the
Well,
other thing
also,
about like when you're talking about Tony Stark, that back in the day it seemed cool that he would develop, you've got this billionaire who develops weapons for the government, and so he just builds in his own back doors where he can disable anything that he wants to. And I'm
yeah.
like, well, now that sounds really sketchy, and I'm not so sure I want Elon Musk being able to, disable the entire NASA environment whenever he wants to or whatever. So some of these
I
things.
mean,
All I'm going to say is same task, new mask. Sorry. I
you
have
know,
many
it's
feelings about all
it's
that.
it's it's almost like it's almost like some things we've been thinking about for a while, and they're not new and hard to grapple. Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got.
well, before we get too far, since I had mentioned Neil Adams' preface, he also mentions, if you think about this, uh, the story really has its genesis in a Jack Kirby uh, panel, uh, kind of an omission. So in Fantastic Four 2, there are four scrolls,
Mm.
but he only drew
Yeah.
three cows.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So Neil had the idea to use the scrolls, and the fourth cow would be the congressman, and or I
And
think maybe Roy came up with that.
I'll point out to you guys that I said, I think 2 episodes ago, that the congressman was going to be a Skrull.
I do believe that you called that.
Can you check the
Touchdown.
transcript?
I mean, I could, but I don't feel like it.
D- d- is Tony in New York? Can we get a call on the field?
Can we fact check this in real time? Uh, no, I think that I had never been exposed to that idea that the Inhumans were somehow a Kree offshoot. Uh,
That I knew.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't. I guess that just had never occurred to me or
Yeah.
floated into my head.
But a lot of this stuff really too is either new or just really being explored for the first time. Because
Yeah.
like, you had the Skrulls trying to blow up the whatever the hideaway for the Inhumans were called because of the fact they were Kree related and like, but all of these things like getting them together, I think the Inhumans themselves had really not been used much for a long time. You had a couple of times where Crystal would be appearing in like Fantastic Four and stuff. And this really, I think somebody said they've been milking these stories for a long time. And they really, the number of storytelling seeds that come out of this that just keep coming back and back and back over the next 30 years is crazy. So it was a
Well, yeah, I
very
think
important thing.
I think this story is part of the impetus for the Inhumans to move to the blue area of the moon.
Yep, that sounds right.
And I think that yeah, I mean, and it's I was thinking about that exact same thing, Dave, or Dan, sorry. Sorry. Um I was thinking about the same thing. Uh and then I was thinking about it, it's like it really had only been like 10 years. And granted, 10 years is like
Mhm.
a like I was about to say 10 years is a decade, but 10 years is, forever in comic books. But uh, really it hadn't that stuff hadn't been percolating that long. I mean, we're not that far from when Jack and Stan stopped, you know? So um it is interesting that now suddenly like Stan is editor and is I think letting go of the reins a little bit and Roy Thomas is running around and he's like, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And yeah, and like I was really struck. I was the Golden Age characters, that moment really struck me because I was like, when it that they hadn't come to that point where they decided that that was all real, that it was just comic books, and I'm like, God, it's all very interesting. The uh the metamorphosis of canon, as you move through things. Because I also, if I remember right, because if I'm remembering right from the back issue article about this story, that whole sequence may have also kickstarted the idea of doing the Invaders as a series, So
That would
like,
that would jibe time frame wise, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really did like a ton of shit started right here, and it's fascinating.
No. It's also just like issue 96 especially, I think is one of my favorite comic books of all time. I got that when I was probably 12 years old or something like that. It was one of the first old Adams books I'd gotten. It was like almost my introduction to Neil Adams was that comic book. And if you look at the cover, which has Vision just smashing somebody, it's
Yeah.
astonishing. And then you open it up, and the splash page is, Captain America and this whole thing of it's just an absolutely gorgeous comic book. And it's
Hmm.
also basically one big battle the whole way through. It's just
Hmm.
Avengers smashing Skrulls.
Hmm.
And I absolutely adored this comic book. It
Hmm.
it had everything. And even I think reading through it again, I loved like that the Skrulls are talking, and they've even got some sort of thing called ISDI, the infra beam
Yeah.
spacecraft detection and identification, which when you're 12, that sort of shit is just fantastic. It's like this is high science fiction for me at that point in my life. So I loved
So
this
you,
comic book.
yeah, because I love it because they give that whole description and it's sort of like it's the scroll version of radar or
Yep.
something, and it's like I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. Oh, I love
Well,
it. Yeah,
if this is your introduction to Adam's art, that's pretty awesome. There's
yeah.
some,
Yep.
I'm just flipping through that right now, and some great pages here,
Yeah, he was
particularly number
he
9, I think, page 9.
the with the big thum.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, there's
Hmm.
so much great stuff here. I just adored this. I would go through and trace a lot of panels and stuff like that as I went along and stuff, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it was fun. But but yeah, these were cool, and that's why I tried for years to get them all until eventually Marvel reprinted, I think in the mid 80s, an actual like Baxter reprint of the
Mm.
two issues of Skrull War, which basically reprinted most of these books, and I finally got them all and was able to read the story. And then was sort of disappointed that it was as disjointed as it was, because I was also thinking, hey, there's going to be a bunch more awesome stuff just like this on each
Yeah,
side. And
yeah.
yeah.
You're like the Avengers are going to go up there and they're going to kick everybody's butt, and they're going to, or and
Hmm.
I mean it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about like like I said when I got to that whole like previously on the Avengers, section in that issue where I was like, God damn, a lot happened in this story. I was sort of like, you know, I understand. I totally agree with you that there is some disjointedness to it. Like it goes here and then it goes
Hmm.
there and then it goes there. But at the same time, as I was reading through that, I was like, yeah, it all tracks. Like there's nothing that I'm like, what
Yeah.
are they talking about? It's like, and you know, and in a way, like, okay, so now this show is kind of turned into we're going to talk about Bronze Age comics. Okay, that's great. I'm really into that. Um, but it is
Would you make
interesting.
that decision?
Well,
I mean, you can turn it into something else if you want.
Tad just announced the show as like the bronze whatever. I
Heroes
don't
of Bronze. I thought that's what we were
Heroes of
called it.
Bronze. There you go.
Yeah.
See, we're the Heroes of Bronze. We're bringing the Bronze Age back. But uh, I think that but like that's what the energy of that period was. Like it was like
Hmm.
crazy ideas that just went left and right and left and right and left and right. And then, it was through it's really funny when you think about at that time um how, there wasn't any place where you could be guaranteed to get every issue. It was whatever they put out at the drugstore or or the 7-Eleven or whatever, whatever you could find. And it's like I the thing about it is I'm imagining like what if I could get like 7 of these issues, but I was missing like part 3 and part
Hmm.
5, right? Would I be lost? And I'm like, no, but I'd still be like, I wonder what happened there. I got to
Yep.
find that,
Right.
and um,
I think for me, the
that,
disappointment was I had 96,
mm,
which meant I thought this was going to go on for a few issues and be fantastic and have Adams doing great stuff. And when I finally got it, there was one more issue. It was drawn by not Neil Adams, and it sort of just wrapped everything up in 20 some pages.
yeah,
And I'm like, I thought this was going to go on longer than this.
yeah, yeah.
I think the lead up to it and there, it was like having this as that one. I had expectations it was gonna, but yeah, it so the other thing with this one, I had never until a while ago really thought about Rick Jones and Captain Marvel and the way that
Yeah.
they actually sort of went back and honored the original Shazam Captain Marvel by the fact that essentially Rick Jones and Captain Marvel, one goes to the negative zone, the other's here. It's like Billy Batson and Captain Marvel in the original comics, where only one of them gets to be out at a time, and the other's kind of stuck in the background, pseudo in their head. And
Well,
they're not sharing a personality as much, but
Right.
well, yeah. I think that like in the the 90s when, DC sort of revamped Captain Marvel, Shazam, whatever. Um, and made it so that when he became Captain Marvel, he still had Billy's personality.
Hmm.
Like in a way, I thought that was super fun. But then after a while, I was like, there's so much more you could do with this thing, this idea of like, where does Billy go?
Yep.
And what's interesting about this, and especially the storyline, they really grapple with that
Yep.
you know, although I do, it is one of those things where like, so through all of these Captain Marvel adventures where Rick Jones is floating in the negative zone, like there's never been an issue where Nihilus was like, I'm coming to kill you or anything like that. He's just floating there. And now suddenly it's like, okay, now it's dramatically interesting for here comes a Nihilus. I mean, and again, I say that, but that's comic books, that's like,
Absolutely.
like, the great quote from John D.F. Black about the original Star Trek, where he was like, Captain Kirk would do anything that got us a good story. Like that was like, don't tell me something's out of character for Captain Kirk if it gets us a good story, because like, it's like, and it's like, yeah, don't like, oh, of course the negative zone is dangerous, just because nobody else thought about that.
Right.
But every time the Fantastic Four has gone there, somebody's tried to kill them. So I mean, like, so yeah, I don't know. I dig that. Actually, this story, not having not read this story before, like it made me really interested because literally, I'll be honest, literally, I think that the only Captain Marvel classic, not classic, but classic Marvel Captain Marvel that I've ever read was The Death of Captain Marvel, and now this. I don't think I've ever read any of the uh, the original.
Yeah,
You
I
call
think
him Dr. Jones.
no time for love, Dr. Jones.
But you know what I'm saying? Like like, and now I'm sort of like I kind of like this character. This character's interesting,
Mhm.
which we kind of one of the ideas we've been had floating around in this group was to do some of the Jim Starlin stuff from the 70s, but uh it's possible. I mean, like I was really fascinated by that. I was like, this character's interesting. And who knows? Whatever. I've talked too much. Somebody else talk. Everybody else is reading their comics.
Just looking at this art. But this is, I will say, I mean, to me, I agree. I haven't read much of Captain Marvel. Uh, this is the first time that I can recall a nihilist showing up anywhere except Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and again, I think that also comes to I think that comes from this is in a way, I think that this story comes in a very magical time for Marvel in that Jack and Stan and Steve are gone, right? I mean, Stan's still doing Spider-Man. Um, he's given up Fantastic Four at this point. But because Spider-Man's his baby, we know this. Um, and and now like all the toys are kind of out.
right.
Like Jack and Stan have been like, okay, we're done. It's like Andy handing over all the toys to Bonnie in Toy Story 3, like and like here's and Roy's like I can do something with that, and Neil Adams is like I can do something with that, and they just take it and run, and it's like there's all sorts of stuff like we definitely you have to give Stan credit for the cohesive Marvel universe at least, but that it was also sort of like so kind of limited. There was a ceiling to it, where it was like, okay, well, these are the Iron Man might fly through the sky in a Spider-Man comic or something like that, or they might fight or whatever like that. But like the idea that like Annihilus is still out there And if you go into the negative zone, you're going to run into an annihilus, and
John.
Sorry, that was my turn.
But yeah, no, I think that there's something exciting about that. I will say the one thing that did sort of like throw me off about the reprint that I have that I got. I mean, I got it. It's a download, right? So it's probably the same one Sean's reading, I think, because I got the same forward and backward password, forward and afterwards. Do you notice in '96 that Ronan the Accuser is suddenly regular human flesh toned rather than blue? At least in this reprint.
Let me look here.
Because I got to page 15 and I was like, why does he have regular human skin?
Yep.
And actually, for the rest of the story, at least in this printing or in this, it may be recolored, I don't know, but like all of the Kree are.
Yeah, I don't think the Kree turned a different color for a while.
Well, yeah, but isn't in the earlier books, isn't Ronan blue?
Maybe.
I mean, even in the earlier issues of this.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Oh, okay. So he was.
So now I got to
Are there
come up with
other-
a Well, apparently, like there's two different like races of Kree. There's the blue Kree, and then there's the pink skin Kree, right?
Yeah.
Because Captain Marvel is one of the pink skin, but then Ronan is the blue skin. I may be completely wrong about that, but that's the way I remember.
Yeah, that eventually. I'm not well read enough on the early Captain Marvels to know when that started. I thought that
Yeah.
was a later invention, that early on they were all just regular human looking.
Maybe it was it certainly could be a retcon to explain something. But I swear to God, like when they fight, well, yeah, Ronan's green in
Yeah.
the,
That's where I just got to that page.
yeah. Maybe I could
They
see
did
Neil
some
Adams.
funky coloring in these
They
too, so
they
Yeah.
were toying with the idea of Kree being like mood rings.
Yeah, he
'cause,
is
yeah,
also
on
blue. He's also blue.
yeah, what page is he blue on or green on?
So I think it's page 52 of my story. I don't have a page number at the bottom. Let me see which issue this is.
Is it an
In
Adams issue?
No, it's
No,
a
it's a
Buscemi.
Sal Buscema.
Sal, yeah. In
91.
91, he's blue. 90, he's blue.
What the heck?
And then I think in 92, it's during the Senate hearings. There's like a flashback image where he's green. I could see Neil Adams swanning in and going like, "Look, we got to figure this out."
That is crazy.
And you know what would be great if they went to the Hollow Earth.
What was Glynis Wein thinking? Or I don't know who colored these originally, but
I don't know anything.
Well, and in the one in 90, he's got a kind of a guy behind him as well who looks like it's a mask or a machine
Yeah.
that's got the same blue face with purple armor. Almost
Yeah.
like at this point they were thinking of him more as a robot or something that had yeah, that's crazy.
In any case, I thought that was interesting, and I was like, okay. But
That
I could
100%
see,
tracks for these early comics, by the way.
yeah,
where
100%.
nobody keeps track of this.
Yeah. It's like, oh wait, we did that. I mean, like we could come up with a really good idea. Maybe we could get a retroactive no prize. I, that that is what I always love the concept of the no prize. That was my favorite thing ever. And I remember when we did my Marvel play. Remember that, Sean, when I made no prize envelopes for the cast as like an opening night gift, and they
Right.
all tore them open because they were like, "There's nothing in here."
You got to do the
Yeah,
reading to understand.
yeah, I know. It was the wrong audience. Um, but yeah, and we had a talk back, and I was like, "Here, you asked a good question. Here's a no prize." Anyway, but no, I mean, like, look, I think that the sheer inventiveness of what, like, and it's just like it's not even. I mean, you can't even say it's like inventiveness like Stan and Jack because they're not coming up with the ideas, but they're like, it's yes-anding, you know, and that's it's kind of exciting to watch, and it's also kind of exciting. It's also kind of exciting to think about it in terms of the Marvel method, right? Because like not only are plotting wise, they're yes-anding what Stan and Jack did, but then it's like, okay, then I'm going to give it to the artist who's going to draw this, and then that's a yes and then and then I'm going to put the dialogue in with that's a yes and it's like it's almost improvisational comics, really.
And
And
so to make
that's
the whole thing more confusing, by the way, Ronan the Accuser's first appearance, Fantastic Four 65, he is he is pink skinned. So he just goes back and forth. He may be a mood ring. I think Tad
Right.
actually has the plan. That's crazy.
But I do like when you talk about, it's an improvisational game, Mark. It that's what I felt too, is
Mhm.
this is the era where they turned over the sandbox and you've got this young energy. You've got Roy Thomas and then Steve
Yeah.
Englehart,
yeah.
Len, and Marv, and everyone's coming in and they're that's why I think that explosion of creativity was just no, they didn't know the rules, right?
Right.
No.
So, and you read, like books about DC in the 70s, everything had rules,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
No.
And Marvel, they had a different editor, every 6 months. Let's let this 23-year-old guy be the editor in chief now. You know,
Hmm.
Is it let or make? Because it seems like they had a new editor every 6 months because the whoever had the job was like, no, no, I'm done.
but
Well,
but
no, go
that
ahead.
just and sure there were some misses, right? But you're going to get a lot of hits that way too. Uh,
It is crazy though, like Jack Kirby and Lee, but Kirby especially, how almost the entirety of the Marvel and DC universes at this point are just created out of sort of the breadcrumbs that he leaves behind him when he just sort of speeds through the creation of the fourth world for DC, where the Fantastic Four, he does all, invents Black Panther. And then McGregor comes along in the 70s and does great stuff with
mm,
that. And, you know, Warlock
And then
comes
they,
in as him or whatever. And now
right.
Starlin takes him and does great stuff.
But yeah, what's interesting is that McGregor, they give McGregor the Black Panther, and he starts doing this whole. And granted, Don McGregor is a white guy.
Yep.
Yeah, but he starts
But
doing
he
all of
also
the.
had a bunch of the first black artists on
Sure,
it.
sure, but I
So,
mean, but he also makes it this very, Africa centered. It's about Wakanda, and it's about him being a king, and it's about thinking. And then
Hmm.
Kirby comes back to Marvel, and they give it back to Kirby, and then he goes off and does.
Those are terrible.
They're terrible.
yeah.
And the thing about it is, it is interesting. You were talking, and this kind of goes
King
back to what we were.
King Solomon's frog. I'll never forget, Mark. We
Hopefully.
were out for dinner. I had a reprint of King Solomon's Frog, and
Yeah.
Andy Hogan
Oh,
saw it.
And she was like, "What's the deal with this Kirby guy?" And both Sean and I are trying to explain, like, look at the energy in the artwork and blah blah blah. And she's like, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, okay, all right, all right." But it is interesting. Like, I think that and this is part of my, like, we just spent all this time talking about the fourth world, Sean and Tad and I. That I do think it's interesting how the seeds of the fourth world don't really amount to anything until the early 80s when,
Great Darkness.
well, Great Darkness, but also, Jeanette Kahn comes in and is like, let's reprint these, let's get Jack to finish it, let's, and also, when Kenner comes and says they want to do a line of toys,
Mhm.
she's the one who says, I think that you should use this Kirby stuff, and gets Jack work
Interesting.
designing the toys, and then brings him on to do the Superpowers comic,
The
which he
superpowers.
did the covers and was part of it, did plotting and stuff, but didn't do the interior art and didn't do the dialogue. And I have a omnibus of those Superpowers books, and I keep meaning to read it, and I haven't gotten around to it yet because I'm kind of making my way through. I'm making my way through the Kirby DC oeuvre, and it can
Yeah,
get to be a little bit sloggy.
I think
But
it's on Comixology.
yeah, it is. I have. I'm about halfway through the Demon right now, which like
Ooh.
starts out great and then sort of just goes. Ugh. And OMAC, which I thought started terrible and got worse, and then I want to go on to Commandi, and then
Yes.
I want to hit the because Commandi has always been the one that I love the most, even
Yeah.
more than the Fourth World. I think that was some magic there. Um,
Especially early on, because unfortunately it starts out great and then gets worse
yeah.
in my remembrance. But
Well, I
I
mean,
love that.
I think I think to bring it back to what we're talking about, I think that that's part of the Kirby thing. It's like he's always got this great idea that starts out great. And then I think what Stan did was take that idea and start to infuse, like, and then we can do this, and then we can do this, and then we can do this. And he extrapolates out from it to continue the, percolating ideas. And then we get to like this period that we're talking about where all of this young talent comes in and they're like, these are the greatest things ever. I get to play with all these toys, and then it's all like, because I think everything that Jack starts has like one great idea or two great ideas. And then it kind of, you know, that's me. Um, and to all the Kirbyites out there, I think Jack's a genius. I think that his artwork is unmatched. I think that his ideas are always great. I think his characters are always great, but I always think, but it's like Jack created thousands of characters, and I'm like, I don't think that drawing a character on a piece of paper is creating a character. You have to put it into a story. You have to, develop a personality for it. It is synergy. It is collaboration. That's where everyone shines. And yes,
Kirby's almost a
Stanley.
victim of his own imagination because
Sure.
he simply gets an idea and then rather than really develop it, he just goes on to the next cool idea
Yeah.
that interests
Hmm.
him, which is
Yeah.
why, like, I mean, it's literally like he's just let this trail of interesting threads for other people to pull at behind him
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
he goes, and then people find him and start making cool stuff out of him. And
Well, yeah,
he never takes time to really dig in, you know?
well, yeah, like, we all read Hunger Dogs, right? And that was fine, but quite honestly, as far as a extrapolation out from what he had done in the 70s, Great Darkness Saga was much more interesting and I think carried a lot more weight,
You know,
and that's just because
even
I
even
think,
Mr. Miracle. I like the Mr.
yeah,
Miracle books, but I
yeah,
enjoyed the Englehart Rogers Mr. Miracle books more than I
yeah,
enjoyed the original Kirby ones.
yeah. I mean, like, I think with those fourth world books, and it takes, in my opinion, it takes nothing away from Jack to talk about that they were always better when somebody else came along and said, okay, what can I do with this? But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Krees and the Skrulls. And you know, and I'm trying to remember, like, had they like, okay, so the Kree, we knew we had Captain Marvel, so that was sort of an ongoing thing, right? At least in that book. Had the Skrulls been around all that much? I mean, we had the Super Skrull, we knew that. Um, but like, were they really pulling some stuff, the deep cuts out of the toy box for this thing?
I think they kind of were actually. That
Yeah,
this was the Skrulls at least were not really. I don't think that outside of maybe some Silver Surfer stuff, there wasn't a lot going on in the Marvel cosmic part of the universe at that point. I don't think it was
well, and also
mostly
at
Earth-based
that
stuff.
point, the Surfer was confined to Earth, right?
Might have been by then. I don't know.
Because wasn't that, I mean, the end of once he betrayed Galactus, didn't Galactus say he was trapped on Earth?
Uh,
Yeah, but I don't
by
know how
Yeah,
long that lasted.
by that 1970, when they started his own series or whatever, though, he was back out in space, I think.
sure.
I
That's
don't
true.
know.
That's true. Back,
So
yeah,
many
yeah.
characters, man.
So many. And yeah, it's there so many plot threads and so many uh personal little, well, hey, wouldn't that be neat moments from all of these creators and like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Kind of the bottom line for this is like, once I got to the end of all 9 issues of this, I was really happy that I'd read it. You know, I was like, that was a lot of fun. And the other thing about it that I kind of tried to put myself back in the mindset was, if I'm, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old, 12 years old, and I'm finding these on a newsstand or in a drugstore or someplace, one by one, am I going to be excited every time I get one? And I'm like, yeah, I would be. This would be fun.
Hmm.
There isn't an issue in this where I'm like, well, okay, that was like, I don't think that anything rises to like genius, right? But I think that they're all really fun reads that, you know, I think on Comixology, after I finished, I gave it 4 stars. So, I mean, like,
So I did a quick look, by the way. It appears that the Skrulls started in Fantastic Four #2. Super Skrull was in 18 and 32, and then in a Thor issue. And then after that, it was basically one or two Captain Marvel issues he was in. But the Skrulls as a race don't reappear until Avengers 93. So
Wow.
essentially it is, yeah, as a
mm,
as a group, they'd basically been completely forgotten about until they brought them back here. So I think Deep Cut is probably
yeah.
a pretty good way to describe it. That's crazy.
I
Um,
also add,
well, I was just going to say, I think that's part of the definition of the Bronze Age is you have that first group of comics creators that grew up as comics fans and grew up wanting to be comics creators, not writers or artists that fell into comics. Um, and it just makes it so much more likely that they're going to start culling some of those deep cuts that had been created because they needed to get something on paper this month.
Sure.
Um, and left there. Um,
Yeah, with Adams being so into like the third three or four cows or whatever. I wonder if he might have even been the one that told him to change the coloring uh on Ronan back to what it was in the original like Fantastic Fours. Like you've been getting this
It's
guy wrong. So
it's entirely possible. I mean, I could make an aesthetic argument that I think that he looks better in blue, but
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Well,
I
I
mean,
would
yeah, I
say
think
it's a testament to Neil Adams. Only to Dan's point, only Neil Adams could make you fail to appreciate a John Buscema issue. Uh,
yeah.
that issue 97, it is not Neil Adams, and it is a shock. It is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
shock going back. This
yeah,
feels more like the comics I remember reading, right?
right.
yes.
This feels very much more of the time. But that splash page on number 9, or it's a one-page panel. It's not the splash, but issue 97, page 9, with the Golden Age heroes bursting forth
Yeah,
from
Mhm.
Rick's imagination. Wow, that is
yeah,
that is a page right
yeah.
there. Um, if Anthony's original comic art has that page, uh, I'm not in that bracket, but I'd like to take a look at it.
That would be that would be awesome.
Well, we might be able to see it.
Yeah,
It's-
the Heritage Auction site at Comic-Con.
Yeah, I will say, the one thing about 97 that kind of is disappointing is we don't get to see a Neil Adams version of Annihilus.
Right.
I mean, we do at the very end of,
like a panel or two.
yeah, or even just why, like he's in the background at the very last panel of 96,
Oh, right.
and
It's almost like he forgot to draw his face.
yeah,
I guess he's in shadow. We'll give him that.
don't you say that Neil Adams doesn't know his draftsmanship.
Um, well, there is a story plot point that I feel like I missed. So Goliath, I know he's running out of the Pym
Yeah,
juice, but then it's all of a sudden he's given it up.
right.
yeah, I know.
And I'm not, I went back and forth, like, where was that decision made?
Particularly because has Pym even become the asshole yet?
No, Pym helped them out.
Right.
Well, yeah, but Pym did like smack the he did smack the shit out of Janet, remember? It
Oh,
was yeah,
that
I mean
was
like
now.
it wasn't I
That's what I
mean
was
like
trying to figure out.
it wasn't the famous one,
Okay.
but there was some point where like I remember because it was in the first 3 issues while they were in Antarctica or whatever, and
Okay.
I said, "Wow, Hank just hauled off and smacked the hell out of Janet." No
Really?
one remembers that one. But no, I mean, like, look, I think here's what I think. I think that at some point or another, somebody was like, this Hawkeye thing, that's not really all that interesting. Let's let's give him a superpower, and we've got, Hank. Well, I mean, yeah, and there was that whole issue where Hank was the Fantastic Voyage issue where Hank was inside of the
Hmm.
Vision. So yeah, Hank's been all over the place. But I mean, clearly they're like Hank is the Ant-Man, so but we've got this great name, Goliath. You're like, what are we going to do with that? And I think this is Roy being like, you know what? He's far more interesting as Hawkeye, so let's move him back towards that, you know? I mean, I think that, we're also getting a 9-issue slice of a continuing series, so like the
Yeah.
whole Vision and Scarlet Witch thing is clearly building. Um, but I would suspect that in like issue 98, 99, I don't know off the top of my head, probably would be um, the grand return of Cliff Barton as Hawkeye, you know?
Yeah, they give you like the Cliff's notes of the plot at the beginning of every comic, but not
Yeah,
all of the soap opera elements about what's going on and everybody's
right.
personal life and everything. So a lot of that you're kind of lost on
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
not able to keep up on it.
Well, yeah, and some of it is sort of like so subtextual. Like I thought the Vision and Scarlet Witch thing was well done, but it also was like if I was just picking no time for love. Um, anyway, um, but I was found myself wondering. I was like, look, if I was just reading these, would I pick up on this, or is it just because I know where this is going? Um, and of course, we know that Cliff becomes Hawkeye again. So, but that's also one of those like, let's throw this crap at the wall and see what sticks.
Mhm.
And I would also hazard a guess that probably somebody at some point during the whole thing when Cliff is saying, "Oh, I'm running out of the Pym, size changing stuff." Somebody at editorial would have had to have said, "Why doesn't he just ask Hank for more?" You know? So,
Because Hank's a dick. He doesn't want to talk to
yeah,
Hank.
Hank,
Who wants to talk to Hank?
I don't think Hank is a dick. Hank has problems, like everyone in the Marvel universe. But But I don't know. I don't know if you heard Sean, but I was saying I hazard to guess that somebody at editorial might have said, so Cliff's running out of the Pym formula. Why doesn't he just ask Hank for more of it since we've
Right.
had Hank show up in the last and I think probably Roy we were talking about I think probably Roy has decided that Cliff is better as Hawkeye and he's figuring out a way to get back to that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, you're right. So,
Which, I mean, we don't know where he winds up at the end of the story. He's kind of like Ben Grimm at the end of Secret Wars,
yes.
left out in space.
Oh man. I got an omnibus of those thing the thing
I've
title
got that.
afters and God, it's kind of a slog. I'm like, I don't
Is this the one from the 80s or which one?
yeah, it's the
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
post Secret Wars when he stays on Battle World and
Yeah.
I never like the logic of why he stayed doesn't really strike with me and like Space Ranger Ben Grimm is not it's not the Ben Grimm that I want to read about. So that's been a bit of a slog for me being, a huge Ben Grimm fan.
But just wait till you get to the big change.
Oh, I love that book.
Hey, it's Starlin and Wrightson. What's not to love?
I actually, like what's funny is that book makes sense for me with Bernie Wrightson. The one that never made sense for me with Bernie Wrightson, although like in a way it does, but it was that one graphic novel, the Spider-Man graphic novel, Hooky. Do you remember this
Oh, I
book?
hated that.
Where yeah, Spider-Man goes through the with the girl who comes out of nowhere, who's the mystic or the and
Yeah,
it was like, why is Spider-Man in this story? And yeah,
I remember not enjoying that. I think I was in high school when that came out.
I mean the art was awesome, but it felt like a story that Wrightson had pitched, and I don't even remember who wrote it, but it felt like they had pitched the story about this girl, who was a magic user, and they were like, "This is great. Can you put Spider-Man in it?" Anyway,
But Spider-Man makes everything better. I mean, that's what this story was missing. There was no Spider-Man.
There was no Spider-Man
There's no Spider-Man.
or Hulk.
I think we should write to them and say that they should put out a special edition that includes
because
Spider-Man and the Hulk.
I I will tell you, as a fanboy, I have never liked Spider-Man in the Avengers.
No, he doesn't fit in the Avengers.
Well, you're not gonna like what's coming up next from old Marvel.
Are they putting him back in the Avengers?
Yeah,
I didn't even know. But
Of
isn't
course they
Zdarsky
are.
taking over
I,
Avengers?
I think so.
Zdarsky does Spider-Man well, so it'll be interesting.
I mean, I think that I would like. I will say this. I used to when I was young, and you would do your own little like, oh, if I could do a comic book, this is what I'd do. And I always was like, we need to have the urban Avengers, like the street level Avengers. Sort of what they did with the Defenders in the TV universe.
Right.
And I was
Right.
like, it could be
And the Marvel
Spider-Man.
Knights universe.
Yeah, yeah. And it could be like Spider-Man and Daredevil and
Black
you
Widow.
know, Black Widow and like people dealing with stuff that was not the cosmic thing. And I always thought, Spider-Man would fit in that kind of environment. I remember there was a Avengers run in the 90s, and the big selling point was that they were putting Spider-Man into the Avengers. Do you remember this? It was like 4 issues.
Vaguely.
And the whole takeaway was at the end of the thing, Spider-Man was like, okay, no, no, this is not, no. Because they went into space and they were fighting giant, kaiju things. And Peter's like, what am I doing here? And at the end of the story, he was like, look, I love you guys, but no. And I was like, that was sort of the definitive statement for it for me. Amazingly, in the 90s, there was something that was a definitive statement for me. Um, uh, yeah, no, I
Spider-Man's
mean,
weird if you think about it, because he's a street level guy who's just wanting to protect his neighborhood, who's got actual power that is off the charts.
Right.
And so he really doesn't fit in with the street level gang because he's like a kaiju among them. But
right.
he doesn't his personality doesn't fit in with like the Avengers type stuff. So he really is kind of best just doing his own I'm
Sure.
a jokey guy who's also a Superman kind of thing. So
Well, I mean, but I also think that, I always thought that Steve and Stan got him right. Like he was super strong, but it wasn't
mhm.
like picking up a car was kind of difficult, you know? And I always felt like, I remember the handbook of the Marvel Universe or something that, they said he could lift like, I don't know, 50 tons or something like that. And I was just like, that doesn't seem right. Like,
He's pretty buff by the 80s. Yeah,
yeah,
he
yeah.
can
And
do
it's
it.
just like, and I was sort of like, like it still should be, look, and I'm not one of those people who thinks that he should be perpetually 15 years old, uh, but like I think that they've amped up, especially in the strength department. They keep amping up his strength to the point where it's like, okay, like that. Obviously, one of probably the most effective Spider-Man story, of course, of all time is that one where he's trapped under the big pile of stuff, and
I was just
Mhm.
thinking about that.
and like that it was a concerted effort to do it, and and his villain set, they're never, he has relatively few villains who are uh powerhouses, you know.
Mhm.
Um well, yeah, because like every time he'd fight the Rhino, it was like, oh, I got to stay out of his way. And it's like, so that's the mindset wherein I would do the urban adventures. Like, yeah, Peter's probably it's the same thing you put like I would hazard to guess that Luke Cage might be slightly stronger than Peter in my book. But what do I
Probably at
know?
least more impervious.
I
Right.
would like
Sure.
that. I don't know if that's the way they're playing him or have played him for a long time. But I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I think that Ditko book was kind of that was his farewell off it, right? That was like where he left. And
Yeah. I
those
think
first
maybe more.
33 issues or whatever were kind of
Yeah, yeah.
the height of Spider-Man in many ways. So
Yeah. I just
Well,
got the Ditko Spider-Man Artist Edition.
Ooh,
It's pretty, pretty,
just
pretty
pretty.
nice.
Just pretty.
pretty
Pretty good.
large.
Pretty good.
Pretty,
uh,
pretty.
Yeah.
but
It's
yeah, no,
nice.
yeah. But I mean, there's always that, sorry. Now I'm getting into a fanboy conversation. There's always that temptation to overpower your fucking character, you know? Like I remember
Right.
having I always had this conversation about Superman. I was like, look, I, in my opinion, Superman has like all the powers, but like I always felt like if Superman races against the Flash wins. Like that's all the Flash does is he moves quickly. So why don't we just say he's faster than Superman, right? Superman can still be faster than a speeding bullet, but but the Flash can outrun the time stream. Okay, it's like like or like yeah, no, Superman isn't dumb. He's a smart guy. He's clever. He's able to figure things out. He's still not the world's greatest detective, right? It's like it's fine. Like I always
Mhm.
felt that every time it was like, oh well, he's the best at everything. Did that with Superman all the time, and I was just like,
Well,
okay,
I think the rule is that Superman is stronger. Superman could beat any other superhero except Batman, and that Batman will always win in a Batman versus Superman contest.
sure,
Um, I mean, Elliot S. Maggin said that the secret to writing Superman, because um, Julius Schwartz thought Superman was really hard to write.
right,
And he thought that because Dennis O'Neil thought Superman was hard to write. And he thought
yeah,
Denny, and I kind of agree, Denny was the best writer around. Uh,
right.
but Maggin was like, look, the trick to writing a compelling Superman story is not what can he do, it's what he chooses to do and what choices he's forced to make. So it's his internal struggle of what he will do, not what he
Well,
can.
I think that there is an excellent example of this right in the Christopher Reeve movie, right? Miss Tessmacher takes the kryptonite off of him and says, "You have to rescue my mother first," you know, and it's like, all right, yes, I'll do that. And now he's consigning Lois and Jimmy to danger, and dare I say it, perhaps death. Um, but yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that the moral quandary, like when you get to a character that's that powerful, right? It's like the moral quandary becomes more important than whether or not he can punch somebody out, right? You know, it's that whole thing that we went through with the Superman Returns movie where they're like, just let him hit something. And then they made a movie where he just hit something. And then everybody was like, well, all he's doing is hitting things. Well, I mean, what did you want?
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like
yeah,
perpetual trolley problems or something is what
right.
you're basically talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, like it's always like because like I I also and I like the original, Richard Donner, Chris Reeve Superman movie also, like I also think that the turning the earth backwards and changing time also is kind of okay. It's a Deus Ex Machina, fix this problem without having to do anything hard, right? And that sucks too. But I mean, I love that idea of, this
Yeah.
woman who's morally compromised in so many ways. We know this. Um, asks him to make a promise, and he can't not go through on that promise. And that's amazing to me. It's like, I mean, I think that's the beauty of that character, and that it makes me wish that they had figured out a way for him to do both, and
It's weird,
but
actually. My favorite Superman is the Superman from the Justice League animated of like the Tim one. Because for the
yeah,
most part, he didn't appear that often. And a lot of people complain because they're like, why is Superman not just able to do all this stuff? And why is he so weak and he keeps getting beaten up? And then I think it's Lobo or Darkseid or somebody appears at the very end. And he has a speech where he's like, you know what, big boy? Every day I have to walk around on eggshells worrying about breaking things. You have no idea how hard it is to do that, but I think you can take a punch. And he's
yeah, yeah,
like, I don't have to hold back with you. And he just beats the living tar out of him.
yep,
And you sort of get that moment where you're like, oh, that's Superman's life, that every day he's basically walking around in a world made of glass, having to make sure he doesn't break something every time he breathes or steps or does anything. And how hard would that be?
well, yeah, I mean, I think that, and I actually, I'm, I'll continue this conversation, but I do have to wrap up because I have another meeting at noon. But um, I think that I'm going to be very careful about what I'm about to say. I think that when I watch the end of the Man of Steel, right, I think about that sort of thing a lot. I don't think the filmmaking makes it clear enough, but there is this idea of, okay, you have two people who are completely as powerful as each other, and one that is basically like, I'll kill a billion people, right? And if you stop to save two people, then I'm going to kill another billion people, right? And that's a moral quandary that is inherent in that situation, but the film doesn't exploit as well as it could. Does that make sense? And everybody's nodding.
Yes, it
Everybody at
does.
home,
It's a great
everybody's
thing to do on a
nodding.
podcast.
Yeah. And I think that that also carries through to the ending when he actually kills Zod. Spoilers for a movie that's what, 15, 20 years old now. Um,
Not
but
new.
like, yeah. But I
13.
mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like it puts him in this untenable position, right? And um I respond to that because of that. I like the idea that here is a more, it's not just about how hard you can hit something, or how fast you can move, or how, it's like you're putting somebody in a position where they have to make a choice, right? And I wish, you know, like I remember when it came out, and Sean will know this because I think we had this conversation. I said all you really had to do was, there's the scene in Superman 2 where they pick up the bus and they throw the bus and Superman stops it and saves everybody. And I always thought that what they needed to do in that movie was like have Zod pick up a bus and like hurl it like into the ocean or whatever. And Superman goes out and catches it and puts it on the ground and then turns around and watches Zod like smash 3 buildings, flatten it. And then suddenly you have this visual, it's the visual shorthand to say, look, it ain't going to be that easy, you know? Like, yeah, you just saved these 50 people, but thousands just died, right? And, I know that there's a whole, we want these characters to be better than that or whatever, or able to fix everything. But I think there's also space to have it be like, to ask the question of like, what if you can't fix everything,
Right.
And Sean's laughing.
Well, I'm just laughing at the
But
cat kill that wafting in
yeah.
front of.
But and that's sort of my objection to the turning the world back thing too. It's like you've just imagined a way for him to fix everything when.
But that was in keeping with his power set at the time.
What about the cellophane S? I don't.
Yeah, now that I don't know. That I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that was in
don't know
Superman.
about the cellophane ass.
No, I think yeah, it's total comic book logic, and don't get me wrong, but I mean,
Right.
I think it
I would argue
um
for that as opposed to killing Zod as being more in keeping with character.
sure,
I
I
just
mean,
don't
yeah, but
like
I
it.
mean,
how
it's
long?
I don't feel like anymore. Now, of course, Golden Age Superman, he'd kill people, you know, but
your
anymore it's
rents are too high. I'm gonna drop you from.
right. It's just not a Superman story when Superman has to kill someone.
Well, yeah, Dan, you had something to say. You should say it.
Well, I think it would be in the context too that if you'd developed a bunch of movies already reintroducing him where you see he's a good guy who does everything he can to not have to kill, it's less jarring than if in the first really big thing we see him do, he's like, well, no other option, you know. I mean, this is the whole Batman. How much damage does Joker have to do before you just let the guy die, for heaven's
Right.
sakes? Problem
Right.
the comics have had for decades, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, like, look, and look, we're talking about putting real world thought process into something that doesn't really can't support real world thought processes. I'm just all I'm saying is that I think that the idea of what they were doing there had
mhm.
storytelling merit. Like the effectiveness of how it was presented,
Yeah,
we can argue about, but I think that
that
because like
makes sense.
I do like how that movie, like I think on a script level, there's a lot of stuff in that movie that works. I like where he goes to the priest, you know, to ask what he should do. I like, like there's a whole lot of very human Clark Kent stuff in that movie that is functioning hand in hand with the idea that he can do all of this stuff. And I just find it interesting. I'm not a Snyder bro. I'm not like bring back the Snyderverse or any of that shit. Not that. I'm just saying that as taking that story as what it
Mhm.
is, and if it was Super Duper Man or whatever, I'm sure everybody in the world would have thought it was great. You know what I'm saying? Because they would have been like, that's so interesting. And I think that That's all I really have to say about it. I think, we kind of got into this conversation when we're talking about power sets, but which like
Yeah.
is in a way is like one of the most boring fucking conversations that you're like, who could the Hulk beat up Thor? Yeah, yeah, well, maybe. I don't know.
Depends
It's
who's
just,
writing.
depends on
I
who's writing
mean,
it.
I mean,
And
the
depends on
answer is yes, he could beat up Thor. Whether he would win the fight is a different question. They would both be pretty battered by the time it was over. So yes, he beat up Thor, but what's the objective beyond bruising him?
Well, now we
well,
know Thor could just, whirl his
open up
hammer around and shoot him through a wormhole. So, uh,
That too. Yeah.
well, like, and the other thing is like one of my favorite, and I believe it's a Stan Lee quote, maybe I'm wrong, but it's like, really, who would win? It depends on whose book it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Valid.
If the Hulk fights Thor in the Hulk, then the Hulk's gonna win. And if the Thor fights the Hulk in Thor, then Thor's gonna win. And it's
The answer
like,
is
like,
Squirrel Girl.
okay.
the I mean, it's like Godzilla versus King Kong, right? You know,
Right.
Japan got the version where Godzilla wins, which we
Yep.
can't even see in the United States due to Toho and Universal's contracts.
I didn't even know about that. That's pretty
I,
hilarious.
yes, but then we got the remakes where King Kong got his magic axe and everything was I don't remember. I saw an interview with somebody and they were talking about that. It's like, why does he need a fucking magic axe? He's a giant ape. Like, isn't that enough?
We're talking about the Godzilla versus King Kong and the Snyderverse. It reminds me of one of my favorite memes. It was Godzilla fighting King Kong, and Godzilla says, Mothra. And King Kong goes, why did you say that name?
You know, eh, you know, I could have a conversation about that moment too, but I don't want to get into it. Uh, anyway, no,
Yeah.
Kree Skrull War, loved it, thought it was great. I don't know what we're doing next.
Yep. I I also loved it. Great series. A lot of
Yes.
fun.
I
Really.
liked it. I can't go love.
I think we could tell, Tad, by the fact that you haven't really said anything for this.
Well, I often just like listening to you guys too. But yeah, no, I felt like there was a little too much hand waving here and there. Um, oh, we're suddenly going to give Rick Jones the power to fix all this. Um, and I mean, part of it is I grew up on a different era of comics. Like I read some of this era as a kid, but when I really got into comics was in the 5 minute comics that you despise. So so I look at it
I don't
sometimes the opposite. I'm sitting there going, I just spent 40 minutes with this comic and I feel like I could have gotten the information out of it that I needed in like two.
see. I don't despise the 5 minute comics. I'm
I
just
know.
saying that there's a joy that I had in getting to that wrap up in the 96. And I was like, Jesus Christ, a lot of shit happened in the story.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know. I don't know. If we continue on Bronze Age stuff, Tad, you're gonna have a long road.
Right.
That's one of the reasons that I want to do this because I'm trying and why I do a lot more listening. Um, because like I know how much this is the roots of a lot of stuff that I love, and I don't dislike it, and occasionally will come across stories that I like more than I like others. Um, there were a handful of issues in this that I liked a lot. Um, so it's like I'm trying to unlock what I mean. I need to go listen to some of Dan's X-Men stuff because I have similar problems really um diving into Claremont's X-Men. It's like on one side there is the beauty that every one of these comics can be read all by itself. And and on the other side, like I sometimes feel like it's really disjointed storytelling when you're not just reading them one at a time.
Well, I mean,
I
I think that that's a fair point, but I also think that it also I think that our society has gotten so used to the idea of binging everything.
right,
And, you know, my wife and I, when we try to watch like a classic sitcom or something, like we're just like, I can watch maybe two of these, then I gotta stop because it just you realize how, like it's not it's running in space in a lot of ways, right? But I think
right,
comics do the same thing, and it's like that if you're gonna pick up Avengers 96 at your 7-Eleven or whatever, and you're like, oh, I got an Avengers comic. I'm gonna go home and read it. And even if it's in the middle of a story, but you still feel like you got a whole story, and you
Yep.
got to sit there for 40 minutes and read it, go through and look at each panel and blah, 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 then you've
right.
gotten a full experience. And then you can wait until next month. And you're like, okay, next month, I'm going to get another one, right? And it's going to be another full experience. And I think that the way that the industry has gone towards building everything to the trade has sort of broken that experience. And I don't, it's neither good nor bad, right? But I think that that experience is one that I miss, right?
I
And
think we
and
can say it is bad as someone still reading monthly comics or trying to. I've gotten to the
Yes.
point now where I leave them sitting around, usually for 3 or 4 months, and then
Yeah.
read a group of them because otherwise it's pointless to start
Yeah.
reading the first issue of a 4 issue miniseries because you're not going to get enough story.
Well, I think three three quarters of this panel would probably say it's bad, but I wanted to be fair to Ted.
I won't necessarily say that it's exclusively good. I think there are a lot more stories that shouldn't be. I think we cling to the single issue market because of a collector's nostalgia. There are a lot of stories that would just be told better if they didn't have to be split into five parts. Um,
Well, from an economical perspective, if it takes me half an hour to read a comic that was done in 1975, say, so I'm paying $1 an hour for this entertainment. Now I can read, these comics in 5 minutes and they cost $5 a piece. So it's costing
no,
$60 an
I mean,
hour.
I get all sorts of arguments.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, really, I buy the floppies I do mostly just to make sure that I put my note in saying I like this kind of comic to be created. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to
Right,
put a bit of my money where my mouth is. So
Right.
if there's
right,
science fiction stuff out there, for instance, that looks like it's relatively optimistic sci-fi, I'm almost certainly going to be buying it just to make sure that they know there's at least one person out there who wants
right,
this kind of comic book. I would
right.
rather wait for the trades, but the problem in comics these days is if they don't sell enough during the pre-sale or the pre-release, half the time the series in the past never even got finished,
Right.
let alone them bothering to do a trade or really promote it going forward.
That's not as true now. I think most of the I mean, one of the reasons
It's better
we're
now, yeah.
falling, one of the reasons we're getting more and more 4 and 5 issue series rather than six is they have no intention of not putting out the collection. Every
Yeah.
once in a while, you'll have a situation where issue 3 and 4 never get printed, but the collection comes out. Um, but the book market, the library market is too big for them. I mean, again,
Well,
like it's
I
been
mean,
played with once or twice, but not deep. I've long thought that like there there's a market to put out issue one and then the trade. Um,
yeah.
but that hasn't
Make
happened.
one the collector issue that's kind of the teaser, and then yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I
that
mean, and
could
I
work.
don't think I don't think that any one of us could say that we don't appreciate the fact that there are collected editions of stuff, especially like classic stuff, right? Um, it was funny. I was, Sean and I are getting ready for San Diego, and I've decided to join the dark side and slab a couple of books. I have, two copies of the first print of Killing Joke that I'm gonna get slabbed because I'm like, I can get this anywhere, you know. I can get it digitally, I can get a reprint, I can get whatever. And I mean, there's something to be said there. I mean, I hate the idea of putting them in plastic. I hate it, you know, but I don't know. I mean, I think I find it the change in terminology and the word that you just used, Dan, the floppies. I find that so interesting, and I don't know why, but it's just like, and the other factor that I think needs to be really considered about all of that is it's also the retailers, that they they need to have something coming in
Right.
Yeah.
on a weekly basis, and they need it to be something that, I mean, at least right now, right? It'd be great. I mean, like, I'm sure if you asked retailers if they could get comics back down to $2, they'd probably love it because they would sell, you know, people would take more risks. They would, but like even now, like I still read Amazing Spider-Man. I read it digitally, and sometimes I'm like, why do I keep getting this? Because it's not that good, in my opinion, right? It's just running in space, and it's not. I'm like, oh, great. Peter has a cousin. Aunt May had a child that she didn't know about. I'm like, sorry, spoilers for anybody who hasn't read the issues, and I'm like, I,
I can understand Uncle Ben having a child he doesn't know about, but how
I it's Ben and May's child, and somehow there's this hand wavy exercise
all
of
right,
why,
never
and I'm just
mind.
like, okay.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug, Peter.
Oh
I guess
man.
like what makes for the best art and what makes for the best business have always been at war with each
100%.
other. I guess going way back to what the initial point we were making here is I don't know that I disagree that single issue comics aren't as good as they were in the Bronze Age, or at least that there weren't many Bronze Age single issue comics that were as good, or that the Bronze Age single issue reading experience was better. Um, but I don't think that that goes to the storytelling as a whole. It's
My
just
my contention would be that the people making comics now are more talented and better trained than people making comics at any time in history. The
right.
creators are fantastic. The problem I have with single issues right now is that if you had a story in the 70s, you had 22 pages to tell that story, and it would come out as a single issue. And maybe there would be
Mhm.
some threads you know of a
Yeah.
soap opera going through it. Now, if you have a story to tell, they tell you, okay, split it up into 5 or 6 story beats. Let's make this an arc. And each one
on
of them is going to be a tiny little part of that. So that the
Yeah.
actual amount of storytelling you get is like if you had one idea, Kirby would have told that idea in 20 pages. Now you're taking that same idea, extending it out to
and,
100 pages,
and,
and it
and
just thins it.
well, I mean, does it thin it or does it flesh it? I mean, I sometimes like storytelling that's not compressed. I like storytelling where we get mood and atmosphere as well as just the plot beats.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, but
I
I don't
I
feel like
think
I'm getting all those other
I,
things.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of these comics I would have liked a lot more if they were 3 times as long with the same amount of stuff in them. You know,
I mean, like, look, I'm not adverse to what you're talking about, Ted, because like,
right,
look, one of my favorite comics of the 21st century is that issue of Ultimate Spider-Man where it's just May talking to her psychiatrist for 22 pages,
right.
right? And I think that that's a genius comic. I think that it's brilliant. I think basically nothing happens in it, but a lot of things happen. But I think, and look, there are genius examples on both sides of the aisle, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, look, but I mean, I'm just saying that I
I
think
mean, that goes
that
back to why I do want to do this club, even though I'm clearly the one that is the I, I I'm the one that needs to be sold on one level, um, because I know that there's
you're
genius, but it's sometimes hard to
you're
to 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 find
yeah,
it all for me.
yeah,
Um,
you're the one quarter that's wrong. It's fine.
that's fine. I'm okay being
Um,
wrong.
yeah, no, no, no. I mean, that's a total joke, and you know I'm
I
joking.
know. I know.
But yeah, no, no. I think that it it's just that every like when I think that the big problem, and I really do need to get off here, but
Right.
uh, the one, the big problem is that I think, and let me talk about this just in a business sense, right? I don't think that this decompressed storytelling allows for like it's all designed around people who've been reading these books for 30 years, right? Instead of like a 6 to 10
No,
year old kid
we
who
we
just
we are
wants, yeah.
yeah,
But I mean,
we're
like,
absolutely not as good at this is your first comic. It should
We
be
are not growing the market. Oh, yeah. I
no,
think
yeah.
last month I picked up the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and if that was my first comic, I
No, I mean if somebody when I have kids getting into comics, I gear them to I like push them towards graphic novels. I
well,
look
yeah,
for the
my
less expensive ones if they need to be able to convince parents. I talk to parents about the fact that the single issue comics just aren't designed for like if we really want the kid to read it, if we really want the kid to get into reading through it, you need to be able to give them a whole story, and that means this, not that.
well, I mean, like, look, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, their kid comes over here every once in a while, immediately goes into this room I'm sitting in and starts picking up my comics, and invariably they pick up like I came in here and they were reading the very earliest Spider-Man stuff, just soaking it in, right?
Right.
Just loved it. And then when they left, I found this note that I have taped up over here that they wrote to me that just said Steve Ditko is good. And I'm like Steve
That's
Ditko is also an
fantastic.
Ayn Rander, which your parents will not be happy with, but that's okay because he is good. Um,
Yeah.
um, but I mean, like, so like I do think that this kind of storytelling,
You mean you didn't say it, you put too many O's in God?
no. Oh no. Let me
no,
be
that'd
clear.
be
I
Kirby.
don't
Oh.
You're talking to the wrong guy. I do not think that either Ditko or Kirby is
No,
God.
in that
But
case, you misspelled Springsteen. That's
that is correct.
Mark
Um,
needs to go.
but I do need to go. I have a production meeting that I have to get to in 10 minutes.
well,
But
where I was
and
really going with this is I want to try something slightly different for the next couple of months. I don't care which storyline you guys pick. You guys get to work it out. But I think we should read one issue at a time. I think we should do it as, and that's kind of what we did with the Kirby. So maybe if there's a crossover, but let's get that experience of I have this thing for a month, because I think that's also one of the things that's throwing me is I'll read an issue and then I'll read the next issue and it's like I don't feel like I'm going, but if I separated them, I might enjoy them both. I'm just trying to get a feel for like, and that's the other issue is like when they were doing stuff this way, they'd wind up having filler issues or they'd wind up having bad issues or whatnot. So it made it harder for them to collect things. That's one of the reasons why so many people didn't believe the collections were going to be a thing, because they're like, well, what numbers would you collect? How many different Dark Phoenix Saga collections are there? None of them have the same comics in them. That sort of thing.
all right,
So
if you really want to do that, I'm
yeah.
going to suggest Fantastic Four 237 to, well, that's a long one. I thought that was shorter than what it was.
How many is it?
237. No, I'm sorry, 257 to 262.
I'm down with that.
Galactus.
that's the
257 to
problem.
262.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
Bronze
There's
Age, though, is it? Not that
Uh,
I don't
really
know what the
matters,
Bronze
but
Age is.
Bronze Age is technically 70s into 80s, I think. It was
really-
I
until the
thought I
Craft
thought
Age
the
started.
modern age didn't start until like Image or close to Image.
Oh, then we're
I
fine.
tend to feel actually, well, let me do some research on where this actually happens, because it's actually kind of a longer story than I thought.
Well, didn't
Trial of Galactus, I think.
didn't I look that up?
I think it's like 12 issues, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because well, what's collected in here is 242 to 244, and then 237 to 262, or 257 to 262.
Is this like the
Because
sequel to the
242,
Trial of Reed
244
Richards?
I think it is the Trial of Reed Richards. They just sometimes call it the Trial of Galactus. Although
Yeah,
I could be wrong on that.
because
I think
that
Richards is the one who's actually on trial.
242, because like
That's
it's
261 to
242
262
like-
is the trial.
is the trial, but there's just like the
Oh, but you
instigator-
got
Yeah, 'cause I
instigator
actually-
event is in there.
44.
I actually have issue 262. These are ones that I may have read at one point. Which
I tell you
doesn't
what,
mean that I
let's
don't
have
want to
this
read them
discussion
again.
offline.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But I think, but
Fantastic
it is a
run, though.
generally
It
kind of-
is.
yeah, because you kind of got to know what happened, why there's a trial going on, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Cool.
maybe
That's
we
one
won't
of
do
my
an
favorite
issue at a
covers.
time. But yeah, no, I know
I
this
think
run
we
and
could
I'm
still.
all for we'll figure it out.
I think we could maybe still do an issue at a time, but we could.
I'd be okay
we
with
need
that
to talk
too.
about how to do it.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
All right.
for the Heroes of Bronze, this has been 22 panels, and we will see you after the next page.